Jan, you're muted.
Good morning and welcome to the online service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. We're so glad that each of you are able to join us this morning, and together in community, we can ensure that social distancing does not mean social disengagement. Our weekly services are more than just a gathering of our physical bodies. It is the forming of a sacred time that we have been making together for 199 years now, as we work to build a more just world. And in that sense of sacredness, along with deep respect, we acknowledge that our physical building is on the traditional land of the Pocasset people. Whether you are well-versed in the technology of teleconferencing or not, we welcome you. For those of you new among us or reconnecting with fonder hearts, we invite you to introduce yourselves and where you are connecting from in the chat box as you are comfortable. After our service, we invite you to stay and participate in a breakout group for conversation, individual connections, and deeper check-ins. Whether the faith and traditions of your past, whatever your theological stance, whatever your heritage, whoever you are, and whomever you love, we welcome you. You can learn more about us on our website and Facebook page. We encourage you to share our Facebook page and reach out to others who may feel isolated and might benefit from the spiritual connection with our loving community. There's some announcements which I need to see. So the newcomers are invited to join Reverend Catherine via Zoom after the service for an informal get acquainted session. Let us know what brought you here. What questions do you have about Unitarian Universalism and our congregation? And the Zoom link will be posted in the chat box near the end of the Sunday service. Again, we want to welcome you to the UU Congregation of Danbury, where we welcome all in a spirit of compassion, inquiry, and service. Today, we welcome Venerable Wisdom as our service presenter. Then Ocean of Wisdom Sekya is a Buddhist priest in the Lam Dathian Vietnamese Zen and Pure Land traditions, and abbot of the Middle Way Meditation Centers and the Middle Way Peace Order. He's also a practicing licensed professional counselor where he blends East-West psychology. And just a little about me, this is Dan Brodax. I'm very happy to be here. This is my home in every sense of the word, spiritually. And I want to thank Sue Shaner for introducing me to UUCD back in 2004 when we were at WestCon. And again, very happy to welcome Venerable Wisdom this morning and be a part of this online service with you.
Good morning, everybody. It's so wonderful that we have an opportunity to be able to meet and practice together no matter what the tradition is. And it's going to be a little bit of our discussion later today as well. I thank the UCD as always for inviting me. I always have a great time. I've been a guest presenting here since going back to the barn down in Reading. And we're gonna, for those of you who are here for that, we're gonna do a little of what we did down there today when we get to the metta meditation. Or is that now, right now? Metta's right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll do that right now. So metta is metta translated from the Pali language means loving kindness. And In our tradition, the Buddha said that what we should do is we should cultivate a sense of loving kindness for all beings, whether tall or short, uh, wide or thin, and even visible and invisible. And the quality of metta is always expressed in the suttas, which are the what we call the collection of texts, the teachings of the Buddha, as expressed as the type of love a mother would have for her only child. And the idea is to kind of cultivate that quality for everybody that we meet. Okay, and even everybody we don't meet as well, just to have this boundless metta for people. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a short meditation, and it's very easy to remember. This is a short. Mettas can be longer or they can be shorter. This is a short one. When I invite the bell once, what you'll do is you'll just repeat to yourself, may I be well and happy. May I be free from suffering. May all beings be well and happy. May all beings be free from suffering. And then just repeat that silently in your own mind. May I be well and happy. May I be free from suffering. May all beings be well and happy. And may all beings be free from suffering. And so when you hear the bell, just get a comfortable position, a place where you can breathe, have a straight neck and back. And before we start, again, I should mention to you as one of my girls comes right here. I am in my home, I'm in my home temple, and my girls are here and they sometimes bark. And in our tradition, we just use it for practice. We try not to get annoyed or irritated. That's reality as it is right now. And this is Natasha. You gonna join us for metta, honey? You gonna join us for metta? Okay, honey. So may I be well and happy. May I be free from suffering. May all beings be well and happy. May all beings be free from suffering.
Please join me now in reading, reading with me our chalice lighting affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. In preparation for Time for All Ages, please ask younger congregants, children specifically, to come closer to the screen where we can now enjoy the Unitarian, the children's confirmation. Put your U's up in the air, please. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving heart, and helping hands. We help one another. I'm sorry, we care for the earth and each other. It is my pleasure to introduce Venerable Wisdom to do the Time for All Ages.
So hello, everybody again. And of course, our young ones in the audience. Sometimes, you know, in religion and spirituality, we have these big ideas, and sometimes they're hard to understand. So sometimes it's easier to kind of give a very simple example of a big idea. This metta that you may or may not have heard that we did before, this loving kindness, comes partly out of a recognition of our interdependence. And interdependence means that we all rely on each other. You know, we all help each other and we all support each other. And not only that, but the earth supports us as well. And a person who's really been able to step back and really look at that and see that has a very different view of things than a person who's only thinking of things right in front of their face. And when you have that big view, we call it interdependence, then you really see that we really are interdependent and interconnected, right? That everything is interconnected. The water supplies all life. We need to have water. We need to have the sun. We need to have the earth to grow food. We need to have people to create that food. Without all of these things, if you had breakfast this morning, everything that's on your plate came from someplace else. And it's the labor of many, many other people that put that on your plate. But we don't often see it. If we just look at the plate, we see whatever's on the plate in front of us. But the entire world's in everything in front of us in that plate. I was at a monastery once, and in the Asian tradition, you know, there's a lot of rice. Every meal has rice with it. And I had a very, very good friend and teacher named Zhirang Fashe. And Zhirang Fashe was really, really a unique monk. And this is when I was a monk, and I'm now a priest. And we had finished a meal, and on my bowl I had you know, a few little bits of rice, which we often don't really think that much about, right? A few bits of rice, wash it out. So I get up to wash my bowl. Zhirang Fashe grabs my arm, and, you know, really quick, like I knew his way. His way was like, it's about to tell me something. And he leans into me and he says, "Look at that rice." And I'm looking at my bowl and I'm like, yeah, it's rice. And he says, "The labor of the farmer is in every grain of rice." And it struck me, wow, this didn't get here from nowhere. You know, even these little bits of rice left, you know, in the bottom of this bowl represent the earth and the sun and the water and the labor of other people. And it's not just them. You know, that rice was, you know, it was grown, it was harvested, then it was put into a truck, And someone had to have an idea of a truck, and somebody had to give birth to the person who drove the truck, right? And that truck had to move it to a store, and somebody had to have an idea of a store. And not only that, all the things that are part of that truck that lead to that rice moving from one place to another, the tires on the truck, somebody had to have an idea of a tire, right? Somebody had to create the tires. Somebody had to harvest the rubber that goes in the tire, the engine of the truck, the road. Someone had to build a road. Someone had to have an idea of a road. So before that rice, when I was looking at the bowl, it seemed like just 4 little grains of rice, but it really was everything that it took to get that rice to where I was. And that's the idea of interdependence. And that helps us to create gratitude. We tend to always think about the things we don't have. And we tend to not appreciate the things that we do have, particularly today. I will tell you, if you watch TV or you read any magazine, it will tell you all the ways in which you should be completely unfulfilled. But we really have a lot supporting us in life. And we extend that idea to all people. We create, again, this gratitude for all of these things that are here that support us. But we also have to understand that we create this fake line between us based off of nationality, based off of race, based off of religion. But we're interconnected. Whatever happens to one happens to all of us. And the example I often use for that is, if you cut yourself on your hand, okay, your right hand immediately goes to do something to protect that wound and to care for that wound. Your right hand doesn't go, well, I don't like my left hand. I'm not going to deal with my left hand. My left hand was annoying to me earlier. My left hand doesn't look like me. Matter of fact, it's exactly the opposite of me, right? I'm not going to help my left hand. It's nonsense. It's silly. And from a Buddhist perspective and an interdependence perspective, we say it's the same silliness as I'm not going to help that person over there because they don't look like me or sound like me or they're not from my nation. Okay. Not from my neighborhood, not from my school, not from my town. It doesn't matter. They're still part of you. Okay. The entire world is part of us. And this is interconnectedness and this is interdependence. So whenever you have a meal, what we do is when we have a meal, we try to sit down and really reflect before we eat it on everything that brought that meal. In the Christian tradition, they often refer to it as grace, where they give thanks to everything that came, everything and everybody that brought that to be. And that's one way that we can help create a more contented mind. And that's interdependence.
It is now time for our shared milestones. Please use the chat window to share joys and sorrows that are lifting you up or weighing you down this morning. Also, feel free to light another candle or place a stone in the bowl and enjoy the time in self-contemplation. Find a comfortable position, please. Put your feet on the floor if you can. We're going to take a minute or two of silent reflection, after which point we'll launch into Spirit of Life.
Please join me. Spirit of life, come unto me. Say in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Move in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots for me the Lord, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
It is now time in our service where we offer our congregational offering. If you are with us for the first time, feel free to pass the virtual plate, as your presence here is your gift to us. Members, please express your generosity by clicking the link that will be posted in the chat window to make a donation or pledge. Even though we are not in our sacred space on the ridge, we are creating a holy time and place together, and our operating expenses remain the same. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury. Thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community that we love. Please join me now in our congregational response. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offerings.
Good morning again. So the talk this morning, returning to our true home. And to talk about this, we need to talk a little bit about a concept in Buddhism called Buddha nature. In short, the concept of Buddha nature is that we all are really already enlightened, and that we that the ignorance, if you will, because Buddhism says that all stress and all suffering comes from a lack of really understanding things. And this kind of this concept that we're really that our mind is like the sun, but it's obscured by the clouds. And this nature that is our Buddha nature always exists. It's the sun. But we kind of get bogged down. So we have to find our way back to that nature. And that nature is what we refer to also as our true home. Or in Buddhism, what we often refer to as the Pure Land paradise, if you will. And this quality helps us because if we accept that concept that I'm really just, not functioning well or having misery or having suffering because I just haven't come to understand my true nature. I haven't settled in my true home. Then it helps to motivate us to kind of work to get rid of those clouds, to get rid of the anger and the greed and the ignorance that we have in ourselves. But you also have to understand that, like it is for us, it is for everybody else as well. So we have to develop a sense of compassion for ourselves, and we have to develop a sense of compassion for others, because we're all kind of in this mess. Everything that we do that leads to more stress and suffering is done out of our own lack of understanding, of not seeing things clearly. And if we go back to the metta talk and the interdependence talk that I gave, the little talks, that's kind of it. My solution to this certain thing that's irritating me is not for me to pick up a stick and hit it. And the thing's irritating me because it thinks it's irritating me is going to make it happy. And this is really what we call ignorance. And we often use the word ignorance in the West as kind of an insult. You're ignorant. But in Buddhism, we just use it as a ignosis, which literally means not knowing. We just don't know. And when we mean not knowing, we mean not knowing from a sense of experiential not knowing, not intellectual not knowing, but experiential not knowing. And I'm sure all of you have had an experience of intellectually understanding something and completely doing the wrong thing anyway. I don't think any of us are free of that scenario. So this is the experiential knowing. It says, oh, well, maybe I won't do that again in the future. So, and we're at a kind of, with this concept of Buddha nature, it doesn't really change. The concept has been the same from Buddhism going back to the beginning. This notion of our true home, this kind of Pure Land paradise where everything is wonderful, also goes back. And again, it comes back to the nature of our mind. It's not like the Pure Land, something out there. It comes to the nature of the Pure Land that is our mind. And right now we're in kind of interesting times. When I was growing up, about 75% of people attended some form of spiritual community, whether it be a church or synagogue. About 75% of people went fairly regularly to some sort of service. And as the years have gone on, that number has gone down quite a bit. And I kind of link that back to this notion of when I was growing up, and those of you who are older probably recognize this as well. When I was a kid, when I was growing up, I didn't see people parked in fire lanes. and I didn't see people, people open doors for you. And when you were in stores, it wasn't like sometimes like a feral herd of children, suddenly came from the woods and is running through, the stores. So over the years, we've had a kind of a change in our culture where, in these things we say kind of, that sitting in the fire lane is really all about me. I'm more important. The fire lane really means private parking for me. And there's more and more of that. Now, something to note is, and I'll get to this later, is but we see more and more people in the fire lane, but at least everybody's not in the fire lane. So there are people who have decided, oh, maybe I still need to not do that. Okay. But this is a real challenge, because our society has changed. We get a feeling more and more, if you look at our institutions, we look at our businesses, there's kind of this sense that, that the ethics, if you will, that behaving ethically, okay, it was kind of the norm, and it was the majority norm. And it seems increasingly in our institutions that we've kind of entered a little bit of a bizarro world. The world's upside down. Some of you, it's interesting, when I go back to that fire lane example, it used to be in the old days, that you could walk up to a person and say, excuse me, I don't know if you're aware you're in a fire lane. And you really were doing it just to be helpful. And now people, used to be people would say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot, or I got distracted. They move on and, park or circle until whoever's in the store comes out. And now you just get chewed, right? You tell these people, excuse me, I don't know if you're aware you're in a fire lane. And they say, excuse me, I don't know if you're aware, but you're a jerk. What's your business? Are you the police? Mind your own business. You get these things from people now. So that's kind of split and a break in the community. Before it was simply a member of the community kind of helping another member of the community meet the expectations of the community, right? Now it's, I have a right to sit here because I decided that I'm going to sit here. And we call that in Buddhism, that's ego attachment. That's clinging to the ego. And the Western term would be called narcissism, this narcissism. And, we have a larger percentage of people in the society that have, taken on the sense of narcissism and entitlement. The other challenge here, and I'm going to give you a quote from Solomon Asch, who's a very famous social psychologist. He says, a member of a tribe of cannibals accepts cannibalism as altogether fitting and proper. Now, the reason why I use that example from Solomon Asch is he's saying, when this community standards are such that everybody agrees that eating other people is okay, then you're the weirdo when you say to that community, I don't think that we should be eating other people. And increasingly what we're finding in our society is that the people who are really taking the ethical stance, who really believe things should operate in an ethical way, that they're the weirdos now, the non-cannibals in a society of cannibalism. And that can get pretty frustrating. I can't see everybody, but if you can see other people, how many people have had that experience of feeling like you're the weirdo because you don't think you should fly? Right. I was watching a TV show the other day, and it was an interaction, and one of the people, the people working together, and someone had broken the guidelines of their job, and the other employee had seen that. And then the boss came and asked, like, what happened here? Why did this happen? And the employee who witnessed it said, well, this is what happened. The shift came on and I was the only one that was there. And the other person was very indignant and they actually even said, doesn't this person know how to lie? you know, they were like, just kind of like, you should, that boss tells you that I wasn't on shift on time, you should lie to them, type of thing. So we kind of, you begin to feel a bit more and more like there's been this kind of pulling away of the sense of common courtesy towards each other, which I do think is driven by a sense of compassion, and compassion drives ethics as well as wisdom. So this is kind of the challenge that we have in the modern day. People who are ethical or have a strong sense of ethical are often felt seen as the odd ones. Now, what, did you expect them to tell the truth? God, you're naive. And there's this kind of sense now that and anybody have that weird feeling like you're in bizarro world sometimes, and you're just like, it just, yeah. It's a very, very strange feeling sometimes that you're having a conversation. You almost have to instruct people sometimes on why they shouldn't lie or why they shouldn't do these other things. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So that's kind of the condition that we're in. But so what's the solution then? How do we solve not only that sense of kind of feeling like you're the outsider because you're the one who kind of is really considering other people's well-being, considering the community, considering maybe the bigger mission. And one of the first things that we can do is remind ourselves the sacred is around all of us all the time. The sacred's available, if you will. Whatever your conception of the sacred, whether you think of it as a deity, whether you think of it as the great spirit, whether you think of it as energy that interconnects us all, the sacred's still here. It's still a potential to tap. So understanding that, the first thing we need to do is we need to guard our own minds. Most of everything that's out there is teaching us the wrong way to be. I remember years ago when the show Survivor came on. I think I had only seen part of an episode. And then I started reading a little bit about this show, and this entire show, is basically about how do I, not about winning in a sense of winning in a way of, true competition. It's about backstabbing and fighting, creating coalitions and lying to people. And that's how you win this. And this is primetime TV, how to win by backstabbing people in the back, and so we have so many things out there today that are poor. I see a comment here about nutritional counseling, poor nutrition for the mind. The fifth precept in Buddhism to abstain from taking anything that causes intoxication and heedlessness. And we talk about things like, and also TV shows and books and films and things. So we have to kind of guard our mind from this stuff and remind ourselves, center ourselves. It's very hard sometimes. We can't let the worst in others, make us question the best in ourselves. Because sometimes we can feel that way. We can feel like, well, listen, I'm the only one who's not lying, right? I'm the only one who's not cheating on my taxes. I'm the only one, and we can feel that way. But there are a lot more people than you think. We're just not seeing them as much. They're not as obvious to us. So the second thing to do is also what you're doing right now. In Buddhism, we have a saying, and it may come off as an insult, but I can only quote the way it's translated. Associate with the wise and not the fool. And the Buddha says, if only fools are available, then it's better to remain alone. Okay. So associate with people who think like you. Otherwise, you will feel isolated. You will feel like you really are the odd one out. You really are the strange dog, if you will. So make sure that you build that support. And that's what your community, Unitarian Universalist community is, that community. But not only people who are in your sacred community, but also people who also think the same, who are not a member of your community. I found more and more I have to rely I'm a white Buddhist priest. I'm a minority of a minority. Okay, here in the United States. So most of my colleagues really are Christian ministers and reverends, and most of my colleagues are rabbis and imams. Even though they're not in my tradition, they are my group that I go to. Some of you may see back here over my shoulder, there's a statue of Kuan Yin Pusa, which is the statue of the woman that looks Asian. And she's the Bodhisattva of boundless compassion. In front of her, some of you may have noticed there's a statue of Madonna with Jesus, or Mary with Jesus. And that's actually a statue I inherited from my great grandmother. The idea is compassion, wisdom. The ideas are the same across the traditions. So lock arms with the people who nurture you and get you. Otherwise we do feel isolated. The third is kind of goes along with the notion of not letting the worst in others question the best in yourself, is just continue to practice. Do the right thing. Be the example. How is anybody going to learn? Okay, if they don't have people to look at to see it from. If we just kind of fall into the trap of throwing up our hands and saying it's not worth our time, so I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Everybody else is blocking that intersection. So you know what? Dang it, I'm going to block that intersection too. If we do that, then we don't see, other people don't see that there's another way to be, that there's a better way to be. There's a better way to be that makes things better for everybody. So it's really important that we keep our ethics, okay, and our precepts as best as we can. It's interesting. I had a student years ago who had another Zen teacher, and he was involved in all sorts of bad stuff. Selling drugs, gun running, and all this type of stuff. And he showed up at one of the monasteries that I was teaching at, and we got to chatting, and we got to talking about his history. And he had been in, I think, Detroit. He started telling me about his history. And I said, normally, a lot of times, people are drug running and selling guns and all. They don't usually, just roll into the Zendo. It's not things to do, after you go get your groceries. And I was talking to him and I said, well, what happened? And he said, Venerable Wisdom, he said, it's still the strangest thing in my mind to this day. He said, I used to be on this corner. We worked this corner. And there was this guy, this Japanese guy. And he would walk up and down the street. He said, this is a bad section of town. This guy was dressed nicely. Dressed strangely, but dressed nicely. And he would walk up and down the street, like not realizing he's like surrounded by sharks, here. And he was like so peaceful and so calm. And he said, and I just finally one day, I followed him and I found out where he lived. And I don't know what possessed me, but I knocked on his door and he opened the door. And he invited me in and sat down and gave me tea and we had a conversation. And he said, what got me started was I thought to myself, I want what that guy has. That guy's, we're in the midst of chaos here. Guns and drugs, litter, and this guy's walking back and forth like he's, in this beautiful garden and just walking without, just calm, chilled out guy. And I said, I want what that guy has. And that was it. He started studying at the Zendo, gave up, gun running and selling drugs, actually became a novice, to stay at the Zendo. He didn't actually ordain at any point, but, that's it. So our example is important to others, even when we don't think people are seeing it. You don't know who's going to see you react to something in a calm, ethical way, and they're going to walk away and think about that, later on, and that might transform them. If you've been doing, if you will, living in accordance with the sacred, you've already touched lots of people. You just don't know it. Okay, if they don't know you, they're not going to send you a card, you know, to let you know, by the way, you changed my life. So keep your practice and your ethics. My father told me a story years ago. My father retired from business early, quite frankly, because he felt that the ethics had kind of left business. And he had ordered, his business had gotten bought by another business and whatever, and they were moving the headquarters and to Chicago, and he was working out here in the Northeast, and he wanted to he had this chair that he had ordered that he was using in his office, and the company had done a number of things that weren't particularly kind to the people who were not planning to go with the company when it moved. So my dad was like, gosh darn it, I'm taking this chair with me, and then he thought about it. He bet his bed. He said, the chair has nothing to do with this other thing. They're two separate things. And so he decided not to take the chair with him. As a side note, as irony would have it, he was conversing with the people he was one of the last people in the office because everybody else had, left and moved to Chicago. And he was kind of retelling the story to the custodian or maintenance people. And the custodian guy said, we're just throwing that out. So if you want it, take it. So he wound up with the chair anyway. So he got to feel good about making the right decision, and he got the chair. So that's the story there. So keep with your practice, be no matter what other people do, hold yourself accountable to your standards. The other thing, which is the last thing that I'm going to talk about, is really the most challenging. How do we listen deeply to people when we see the kind of nonsense, if you will, that's out there? How do we listen deeply to people who are so diametrically opposed to what we believe? We're listening and, it goes through your head. How can this person be so stupid, right? How can this person not think the way that I think? How can this person not see? It's so obvious, right? Listening deeply goes back to the interdependence, okay? That the person, why are they behaving in a way that's not conducive to their well-being and the well-being of others? Because they don't understand things correctly. Now, some people, no matter how much you listen deeply, they're probably not going to change. But at least you've taken the time to show them respect and listen to them deeply. Okay. You don't know if it might change later on, but if you try to fight it, then all you get is a fight. Okay. And that's all they remember. So cultivating this quality of compassion and understanding for other beings is very important. You can attempt to, instruct. In Buddhism, I always say Buddhism is an education. Whether they call it philosophy, you call it religion, it's education. You attempt to instruct. The key thing is, this is the big challenge, is how do you instruct in a way that's not patronizing? If you're patronizing with people, they're just not going to listen to you anyway. So there's always ways to couch the way we discuss people. I operate in this way in my life for this reason, without being accusatory. So just listening deeply, and that's also good practice for us. When people are pushing our buttons, are we observing? Are we not reacting? Are we really trying to still be present with them? Because again, these things are other ways of modeling. Perhaps a person's irate at you in a moment because you disagree with them on something. But maybe later on they'll realize, wow, that person was pretty calm when I was yelling at them, and I didn't like that feeling of being angry and agitated. Maybe I want what they've got, going back to the other person, and maybe they'll be attracted to it. Maybe not. We always say in Buddhism, you have to practice without a goal. which always sounds very strange for Westerners. Okay, practice with no goal. You just do it to do it because it's the thing. It's the being present in the moment. And the other thing too is we also have to take a hit of humility. From the Buddhist perspective, the only person who can discern well, we don't really use the word judgment. We use the word to discern. Okay, the only person who's going to discern 100% correctly in any situation is a person who is a Buddha. So if you're not a Buddha, you already know that whatever perceptions you have are in some way faulty. And if you have that understanding, then it creates a bit of humility. You're not so quick to jump in and say, dun, 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 I know it all. I read these amazing journals. I can teach you everything I can, about this topic, right? We have to have that sense of humility, lead with compassion in your ears. Okay, and if there is an instruction that can be given or an idea that can be offered, then we offer it in that way. And that's something to keep in mind. I always remind myself of that only the Buddhas know. Only Buddhas really know. And they're the ones with the clear discernment and to be able to really see the issue as it is. And so if we practice those things, every moment that we're practicing our precepts, every moment that we guard our mind, every moment that we're an exemplar for other people, every moment that we listen deeply to others with compassion in our heart, with metta, loving kindness, every moment we do that, we have returned to our true home. We have returned to our sacred space that is our own body and our own mind. And we carry that sacred space with us everywhere. Years ago, when I made the decision to change from being a monk to a priest, I was really kind of concerned because it's pretty easy to practice in a monastery. Everything's set up for you to succeed, right? There's no distractions. You're on a timetable. You know what you're going to wear every day. There's a lot of stuff going on. And my other teacher, Venerable Thich Trì Hang, said to me something that's always stayed in my mind. He says, the monastery is not this. The monastery is this. If you take the monastery with you, then you will never be away from it. It will always be with you. In the same way, I encourage you all to keep, however you view monastery or sacred space or your true home with you all the time. That's how we nourish ourselves. That's how we nourish others. That's how we transform our society. And it can feel sometimes like we really are the minority. But remember, more people today will do the right thing than will do the wrong thing. More people today will not kill than will kill. More people today will not steal than will steal. Okay, and always remember, there's many positive acts going on out there in the world. I actually have one of my feeds on Facebook, positive news. Get those stories of all the great stuff that's going on and fill your head with that and not all this other nonsense that's out there. So with that, I thank all of you for your practice. And I particularly thank Sherry for her patience in dealing with me on a Zoom session that I've never done before. So she is the Bodhisattva of boundless, limitless patience. So if we can give her a thank you for organizing all of this, I would appreciate it. May you and all beings cultivate metta in your heart and compassion, and may you and all beings be well and happy.
Please join me in the reading of our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
Our closing chant today, the words will appear on your screen in a moment, only has 2 lines, but they repeat in a cycle. And I'm going to teach it to you one line at a time. The first line is, I am a bubble, make me the sea. That repeats twice. Pretend I can hear you and sing with me. I am a bubble, make me the sea. I am a bubble, make me the sea. And then same words, but the melody rises a little. It goes, make me the sea, make me the sea. Try that. Make me the sea, make me the sea. We're gonna put the 2 melodies together. I am a bubble, make me the sea. I am a bubble, make me the sea. Then it goes up, make me the sea, make me the sea. That repeats, make me the sea, make me the sea. And then the middle section goes, wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. Try that. Wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. Again. Wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. We're going to put it all together. I always say to children when they're learning a new song, it's like a big floor puzzle. You take it apart and you put it together. So the same with this. I am a bubble, make me the sea. I am a bubble, make me the sea. Make me the sea, make me the sea. Make me the sea, make me the sea. Wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. Wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. I am a bubble, make me the sea. I am a bubble, make me the sea.
So for closing words, I simply would say to you all, think of the metta. May you be well and happy. May you be free from suffering. May all beings be well and happy. May all beings be free from suffering.